More than 800,000 people in 100 days. That's the estimated number of those killed during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. 30 years later, how are young Rwandans actively working to combat genocide ideology? I'm Myriam Francois, and this is The Stream. The events of 1994 in Rwanda represent one of the darkest chapters of human history, a reminder of the catastrophic consequences of hate, indifference, and colonialism. As the world commemorates the 30th anniversary of this tragedy, what does remembering genocide mean to the younger generation who didn't live through it? To discuss this today, we're joined by Christian Intwari, founder of Our Past Initiative, Jessica Mwiza, a Rwandan activist and sociologist, and Jean-Michel Habineza, co-founder of iDebate Rwanda. Thank you all so much for being here with us. Christian, you run a youth-led organization with a mission of educating young Rwandans born after 1994. Can you tell us about the work that you do and what drives you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm the executive director for Past Initiative, as you mentioned. And Our Past is a youth-led organization that was started in 2012 with an idea of one, as young as we were, to educate ourselves, to learn about our history, but also educate other young people about our history. Two was to raise questions among the younger generation, questions to ask our parents, our guardian angels about what their past was like, in order to know exactly what's happened and the reality behind the genocide that took place against the Tutsi in 1994. So we started in 2012, and the second objective was to also encourage parents to talk to their kids. And the third one was to use the youth contribution and help the country in the building process of our nation. So we have tried to organize different initiatives. We have an event that happens every year on the 9th of April, where we now are recording an attendance of around 2,700 young and old people.
Yeah.
And we have also been taking part in renovating genocide survivors' homes, giving them easy access to water.
Fantastic.
And other initiatives related to that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Christian. Jessica, I want to ask you about your work to preserve the memory of what happened, which is a very personal struggle for you, isn't it, Jessica?
Yes, it is, because when the genocide against the Tutsi happens in April 1994, I was just a baby. And I was in France with my mother, my father, and my mom actually went to Rwanda just after the genocide to search for her parents. And of course, they had been murdered. So when she came back in France, she was very traumatized. So the first thing that happened to me when I was a teenager was some sort of anger. I didn't understand why there was so many denialists in France, so many of them. Why in all those newspapers, on TV, on medias, we heard the false story, some kinds of denial, but in so many ways. So I started to fight actively on social media by writing texts to protect our memory and the memory of our families.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Jean-Michel, I want to ask you about the debate program that you run, which encourages tolerance in the new generation. What are some of the persistent issues that you face even with the younger generation?
Well, one of the things that we have to understand is that in order for genocide to happen, there's been a lot of research on what are the cultural characteristics that actually make things such as genocide to happen. One of them is high obedience to authority, the us versus them mentality, but then also the lack of critical thinking. You find that a lot of the perpetrators say that the reasons why they did things, it was because they were told to do so. So mine is, how do we understand that conflict is inherent to human beings, but then that violence is a choice. So our role is to figure out how can we make sure that we are disagreeing passionately, but then using words instead of violence. And one of course, it is hard because it means that you're changing the way in which culture understands conflict. And then we are also very much almost like a conflict avoidant culture. So part of it, that becomes hard to instill this idea that just because we disagree doesn't mean that we're enemies. But, this is work in progress. This is things that take time. But this is something that we think is important as a preventive measure so that we are not prone to violence again.
Well, it does seem that there is perhaps some work to be done in how the rest of us speak to Rwandans about the genocide. Take a look at this.
I'm never telling anyone I'm Rwandan ever again. As far as you're concerned, I'm Eritrean, because it goes one of two ways every single time. Either, wow, I loved Hotel Rwanda. You know what? Don Cheadle's a really great actor, so whatever. That, or they start to tell me a bunch of facts and figures and events that are completely grotesque, graphic, and gory. And it's like, we're at brunch, or this is an Uber ride. I don't want to hear this. I'm starting my day right now. And I find it really strange because it's not like when you meet someone who's Jewish, you say, oh, sorry about the Holocaust. Yeah, here's a bunch of facts and figures that are extremely gory and triggering. And I just realized there's a disconnect, especially as a Black person, a Black woman. People dehumanize me and other Black women very, very easily. To them, it's a fun fact or a bit of knowledge or history. To me, it's an experience that I know and that has affected me and people that I know.
Jessica, is this a problem that you recognize?
Yes, of course. People are often insensitive toward us regarding our history. I remember when I was in France, very often I had kids at school or other students at university, or maybe sometimes grown people telling me, yeah, Rwanda, you guys were savages, you killed each other, and out of the blue. And I was asked, are you a Hutu? Are you a Tutsi? Oh, did your family killed or was killed? All those questions, I had those all my life. And you show us a video on TikTok that's very interesting, because nowadays denial is wild on TikTok, because people just wake up and take their phone and just think that they can share the history of the genocide against the Tutsi without any research, but with a lot of confidence. And that's what a lot of young people are doing right now on social media. They take their phone and then they say, in Rwanda, this and this and that happened. And most of the time, this is completely false. But it is sensational. So people look at this and click, I like it, and then they share without even thinking. And that's a huge problem now.
Jean-Michel, I want to come to you about that. So what advice would you give to young people who do want to talk about this, but want to do it in maybe a more respectful way than what you've just described, Jessica?
Well, one of the things is also, I think everyone has encountered that. Every Rwandan has encountered that. I think it's also divorcing people who do that out of malicious intent and people who actually want to know. And I think that one of the things that is very important is to tell people, well, the best way to learn about a history is just asking questions, letting the people who have lived through that history be the ones to tell that story, right? Because a lot of people do want to know. But again, think of it, in 1994, one of the issues was that no one had heard of Rwanda. The only thing they had heard was about gorillas, because of Gorilla, in the Midst, the movie about Diane Fossey. And that in its sense is that it fits into the whole idea of the African continent being the dark continent. And the only thing that people know is genocide and bad, it sort of fits the stereotypes of savages who are killing one another. But understanding that actually, no, there's a history behind it and there are reasons that could be understood. And then also there are many things that many people can learn. So it is just understanding that it's work in progress, and we have to learn how to engage with different people.
Well, let's check out this clip from Christian's organization.
Was not there, but I heard. I heard that there was a time the darkness woke up and visited Rwanda. I was not there, but I saw pain and brokenness in my mother's eyes. I saw young girls raising their siblings. I saw young boys taking care of their handicapped mothers. I saw children with no parents and parents with no children. We remember not to stay weak, but to renew our strength to fight for a better tomorrow.
Christian, the slogan for your organisation is remembering our past as we build a strong future. When the past is divided along ethnic lines, how do you build a unified future?
I think it's a good question, but you also need to look at where the division came from and how it was started. So that's why we created our past. We wanted to get the answers to some of the questions most of these young people are asking themselves. And that's why we want to also bridge the gap between the older generation and the younger generation, because either being a survivor or being a perpetrator or being just someone who came from one of the two, we need answers. We need to know the reality and the truth behind what happened. And after knowing that, that's the only way we can protect and prevent the genocide to ever happen again. So it's so hard to say that you're going to avoid it. It's going to be there, of course, but how do you deal with that? You have to educate people first on how it was started, on what was the results of hate speeches that we are seeing nowadays in media and everywhere, and how it was ended. It took over 1 million people. So what we are trying to do here, and to answer your questions, we are trying to educate the young people about the past, but also to make sure that we can prevent such atrocities to ever happen again.
Jessica, you were born in France. Can you tell us how you learned about this history and what that taught you about the importance of not maintaining silence?
Yeah, growing up in France told me everything about denial. Now I am a real expert in denial because of that country. For years and years, it was denial at on the state stage. So it was really everywhere, on the political events, on the newspaper, everywhere. So now I think we really should be careful. First of all, when you decide to learn about our history, you need to pick the books that are written by the survivors or by the people who did their research seriously and who actually talk to survivors. If you pick the books that are liked by the killers, we have a problem. And actually right now, people are using willful ignorance. They are sharing really wrong books written by denialists, by perpetrators. And if you do a simple research on the internet, you can really avoid that. And also, we need to be careful about how do we name things. This is the genocide against the Tutsi, not the Rwandan genocide, not the genocide in Rwanda, not those events where Tutsi were killed, but also Hutu and also blah, 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 not genocide against the Tutsi, because it were only the Tutsi who were targeted with hateful speech during decades and decades that led to the genocide.
And I wanted to ask you also, Jessica, just about the silence that you experienced as a young girl trying to understand it even within your family. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of our family are experiencing trauma. So we don't talk, we don't speak about the genocides. And sometimes young people, they grew up with that weight on their shoulders. And sometimes adults think that silence protects people, that you can live your life without knowing things and everything will be okay. But it's actually worse. We really need to talk to each other, to speak to each other, to know the truth. And this is the only way to go forward.
Now, are there topics too sensitive to make light of? Comedian and founder of Comedy Nights in Kigali, Hervé Kemini, thinks humour can heal.
You know, I think it's, I don't know where I heard that, but I think it's Charlie Chaplin who said, everything is drama in a close-up and it's comedy on a wide angle. So I think what he meant by that is if you take enough distance from something that just happened to you, you can actually find humor in it. And I think that's what is mostly needed after something like this, after a tragedy like Rwanda in 1994. So basically, I'm not telling people that you should joke about it, but I've heard very many survivors when I was back in boarding school, in high school, telling stories about how they survived and the things that they would say in those crazy situations led them to burst out laughing. And I remember those stories very vividly. So I think one of the things that made me want to do comedy is I said to myself, if you can joke about that, if you can overcome that through humor, then I think comedy is the key. This is what we need. And it has to be, it depends on the angle. It has to be empathetic, it has to be compassionate, it has to aim to heal and to grow, not just to bash and criticize and mock, because I don't think that's comedy at all. But I think that's exactly what is needed. That is definitely not just for Rwanda, for the rest of the world as I see it today. It is getting urgent.
Jean-Michel, are there generational differences in how people want to talk about what happened? And of course, please share any thoughts off the back of that video.
I'll first, give a few thoughts on the video. I mean, I think in principle, I think that might be a good idea, what Hervé is talking about. But in reality, I have worked for many years in prevention and having hard conversations. And I think that one of the things, again, understanding culture and understanding how people react to certain things is understanding the weight of history. And we have to understand that there is passing down of trauma. And there we're talking about, not someone having hurt you when you were in primary or somebody taking your bike or anything like that. We're talking about people literally losing their whole family. And this still affects them even up to today. So, I mean, I don't think that, I think slowly as years go on, we are not going to continue to work on eggshells and we have to learn how to have hard conversations. But I don't think it's yet time for humor and all of that. But to answer also on the second question of, are there differences? Of course, there are differences. One of the things is that in our parents' generation, there are victims and there are perpetrators. In our generation, there are no perpetrators. I only say we're all victims of history.
Christian, can I ask you whether you have a different reaction maybe to that video?
So thank you so much. I think it's something that is doable as someone who have been organizing a commemoration event that the main part is art, where we have poetry, music, drama, and other tools to deliver our messages, but also with the sensitivity of the period we are in right now, and the April as a commemoration month. We also need to pay attention on the humor use. We need that because as we commemorate, we also celebrate the resilience of the people who survived genocide, because that also played a huge part in our progress as Rwandans. So I feel like that's something that is doable. We can use that to recover from all the challenges we are facing because of the wounds of the genocide, but in a proper way, in a way that we are not going to bring someone back to where they don't want to go back, because healing is also a journey. So you have to help someone in the healing journey, not to take them back where you make it worse.
So in 2022, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Gutteres had this important reminder: one that we would do well to consider even today. The genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda was neither an accident nor unavoidable. We must recognise that we always have a choice to choose humanity over hatred, compassion over cruelty, courage over complacency. Jessica, how is it possible that we commemorate one genocide whilst others are underway? What lessons have we failed to learn?
I think it is always the case in history when a genocide happens. At the same moment, we have some countries that are commemorate another genocide, especially if it happens on their land. So during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, Francois Mitterrand said never again. And at the same time, he was helping the perpetrators in Rwanda to commit the genocide. So we are having this issue, and we will continue to have this issue as long as we won't accept that it's a collective duty to protect the memory of the genocide that happens in the past. So it is really important that even if one is not a Rwandan or no Rwandans at all, that sense of solidarity must exist. People should try to learn, to read, and to share their solidarity towards us.
Thank you, Jean-Michel. What does never again mean to you?
I think just to piggyback on what Jessica just said, I think that the problem is that we always learn about historical events, but we never learn about ideas that led to those atrocities. So never again is, for me, it means that never again would we allow for people to be dehumanized, for hatred to reign, and for this discrimination to happen that would lead to a tragedy such as genocide.
Christian, many people, when they hear about Rwanda today, they think about the genocide, but maybe there's something else that you'd like them to think about.
I'll try to stay on this topic, but also saying that after 30 years, we as Rwandans have achieved so much. Access to healthcare, access to education, living as Rwandans together. But one thing that I would like to mention is the speech, part of the speech that the president was giving, and he said the only comfort we can offer is the commonality of sorrow and the respect owed to those who had the courage to do the right thing. So I think it shows where we are today as Rwandans. It shows that so many people played their part to make it where we are. And I didn't want to leave this without saying that. But we have the tourism sector that is progressing. We have the MICE, the sector of hosting conferences and the other events that is progressing. So there are a lot that we can offer, and we should remember that we commemorate the whole year. Commemoration is not just for April, but we also keep progressing as Rwandans and keep working together to build a better future for our nation.
Jean-Michel, you've previously said that people in Rwanda are making extraordinary choices which are ordinary. Can you just tell us what you mean by that?
Yes, I think for me, what is impressive about Rwanda is not the buildings, it's not the economy, the healthcare, it is the human story. The fact that people decided to live again, and the fact that people are making choices that in other places are almost impossible to think about. Imagine somebody losing, their whole family and then deciding to do the ordinary things that people take for granted, work and make sure that their kids go to school. But then on top of that, never taking revenge and talking about reconciliation in an imperfect way, right? I always say Rwandans are ordinary humans. It means that what happened to Rwandans can happen to anywhere else, but the choices that Rwandans have to make are extraordinary. And if people put themselves in the shoes of many, it will be hard to imagine the choices that people make.
Thank you, Christian, Jessica, and Jean-Michel. And thank you for watching. If you have a comment about our show, reach out on socials. This is also your show, so if there is a topic that you'd like us to discuss, we want to hear about it. Use the hashtag or the handle AJStream and we will look into it. Take care, and I'll see you soon.